If you love George A. Romero's Land of the Dead from 2005, then you should watch that again, because George A. Romero's Diary of the Dead from 2007 is not a sequel. In fact, Romero never committed to any sequel conventions during his 6 of the Dead movies. We never track a signature band of characters through new spots of bother. There's no face of the franchise, there's no continuous main, there's no old hand to usher us along the plot, just zombies. And his timing is all off too. After Night of the Living Dead released in 1968, audiences had to wait another 10 years for the sequel, Dawn of the Dead, in 1978. Then another 7 for Day of the Dead in 1985, and then another 20 freaking years before Land of the Dead hit theaters in 2005. The only sense of continuity that we get from the first 4 entries spanning 5 different decades is the gradual decay of civilization, the evolution of the zombie, and Romero's love for social commentary, which is why he rebooted the series entirely with 2007's Diary of the Dead. Romero got swept away in the rising tide of citizen journalism, or new media, where people would capture crimes or tornadoes on camcorders and then send them off to news channels or just post them online themselves. It's a fact of life in today's world, but Diary of the Dead was filmed in a very rare sliver of media history, October 2006. In that same month, Google bought YouTube, and Facebook became available for public use. And then you have to consider the first iPhone released the following summer, normalizing access to the first mass market, always ready, pocket-sized video recorder. And that means that Romero made a movie about the rise of new media within 9 months of 3 new media behemoths rising to power. Oh, and speaking of rare slivers of media history, this movie features MySpace in a very prominent role. It's actually where our characters upload their footage to, and MySpace has a couple of different promotions in the special features. All that aside, Diary of the Dead starts over again at 0 hour, and that's because Romero wanted to capture the raw reactions to the first burst of a zombie apocalypse, a nearly impossible task if he were to continue with the loose but ongoing mythology from his previous entries. And that sounds like a pretty kick-ass movie, which makes it such a damn shame that every copy of George A. Romero's Diary of the Dead was replaced with The Death of Death, a documentary by college film student Jason Creed. So let's talk about this framing device, because I think it's the most derided part of Diary of the Dead. The most popular framing device out there that I could think of is for The Princess Bride. You have an old dude read a tall tale to a sick kid. It is delightful. It makes for plenty of little exchanges of wit and banter between these sword fights and this tale of fantasy romance. It is overall a net positive for the story, the clarity, and the pacing. The movie doesn't need it, but it ultimately benefits from it. On the other hand, Diary of the Dead is a worse movie because of its framing device. Because we, the audience, are led to believe that we are watching The Death of Death, a documentary film by a college student named Jason, and edited and scored dramatically by his girlfriend Deb, the other main character. At the start of the movie, and after every scene, Deb narrates slow-motion, play-by-play recaps of everything that we just saw with our own eyes, and then reports back on the instant implications to humanity and moral code, all while montages of stock footage depicting pandemonium garble up the remaining screen time. And this is because while Romero was excited to make his first found footage movie, he lamented endlessly about the technicality of a final cut. How could a found footage movie ever actually come to exist as a coherent finished product? It's practically all he talks about in the director commentary. You hear him anticipate every unfortunate cut or every unexplainable angle. With the despondency of a sob story at your local dive, it's like he completely forgot about movie magic. In a movie where a farmer sticks a scythe straight through his skull to kill a walking corpse ripping flesh from his neck, Romero said, "No one would ever believe this unless we explain how we got 2 camera angles." So throughout The Death of Death, we see our heroes splicing together shots or describing how they hacked footage from security cameras. We're told about the models of hardware used and who added in the music. I think it's intended to enhance the suspension of disbelief, but it does the exact opposite. On the other hand, if you take out this framing device and swap it entirely for the character confessionals and the special features, this movie improves exponentially. Those confessionals were actor improvs shot just for PR kits, but everyone in there does their best work, and they get to stretch out their legs and separate themselves from the rest of the cast and story. And while I have a deep dislike for the framing and the reasons behind the framing, I love Romero's other obsession with justifying the verisimilitude of found footage, and that is the long shot. If you've ever nerded out about the history of film, then you may have encountered a movie called Rope by Alfred Hitchcock, made famous by simulating a real-time dinner party in one continuous shot. I'm always bedazzled by this approach, and Diary of the Dead doesn't live or die by it, but it does try to commit to continuous shots in nearly every environment that they find themselves in. Now, of course, some of these long shots come with hidden cuts, but others are just straight up committed till you get it. And we see this commitment right from the start. It's prominent in the first two scenes of the movie. We start off with a news report in front of the hospital where the dead start coming back to life and chewing up chunks from different reporters and first responders. And then we transition to another continuous shot where we meet our heroes making a mummy movie in the middle of the woods. They're a bunch of college film students, and they're also there with their professor. It's between takes of this mummy movie that our heroes learn of the dead coming back to life through reports on the radio. And this really sets the movie into motion. And I hesitate to call this a zombie road trip movie, but I'm going to call it a zombie road trip movie. They travel from shooting that mummy movie in the woods to Deb's dorm, to the hospital, to a makeshift gravesite, an Amish barn, the militia warehouse, then Deb's home, and then we finish the movie off in this really large mansion that the mummy from the start of the movie lives in. But for now, let's focus on the mummy movie in the woods, because this is where we meet my other favorite part of Diary of the Dead, the side characters. Okay, so in this scene, we meet a damsel, Tracy, and then the mummy, Ridley. Ridley disappears, so we don't see him again until Act 3, but Tracy quickly turns into one of my favorites. She has this very 1992 Buffy the Vampire Slayer feel to her. She's definitely the most casual, conversational, probably the most natural of the bunch. It's her character confessionals in the special features that I admire the most. Tracy is dating Gordo, and Gordo is not Jason London from Mallrats or Jeremy London from Out Cold, but you could easily convince me he's their little brother. My favorite part about Gordo is really his performance in the hospital scene, which makes me so sad to lose him so quick, because this movie really could have benefited from a heroic brute throughout, and he just went out way too fast in such a flimsy way. We also meet Eli. Eli is not Justin Long, but definitely does his best impersonation.
Elliot Stone, Harrisburg, PA, and I'm here with you fine people because, I don't know, I'd like to get home too.
You can see that in front of the camera, but you could also see it in his interviews as well. He just exudes that aura, but this was the mid-2000s. I mean, everybody wanted a Justin Long for their ensemble movie. And there's Tony, who is one of the only actors that I recognize in this movie, and digging into it, that's because he played Wesker in the Resident Evil films. And he was in Romero's Land of the Dead, and he did another zombie movie called A Little Bit Zombie. So it's quite the undead resume he's got going on there. Tony is who I call the angry guy. That's how he shows up in all of my notes. There's a couple characters that we lose contact with pretty quickly. There's Meg, whose death made me feel my own feelings, and that's not cool. And then you have Francine. And I almost didn't write anything about Francine, but when I looked at her IMDb page, it turns out that she's now a director. She just made a motion picture starring Aubrey Plaza. And that's pretty cool. It just goes to show that you never really know what these actors and these bit parts from old zombie movies are up to these days. Unfortunately, the main characters, Jason and Deb, well, they're the movie's other fatal flaw. And that's because I'm almost certain that they are designed to be unlikable. Even though they're lovers, they spend pretty much the entire movie just bickering with each other. I think Deb gets a lot of flack because she does the voiceover work during those chapter break montages. And then with Jason, I mean, every character in this movie makes fun of Jason for hiding behind a camera. And we never really even see Jason's face unobstructed by a camera until the last 5 minutes. And finally, you have the drunk professor, my favorite character for some reason, who just chews up every bit of scenery that he's in.
But the problem doesn't seem to be that people are waking up dead. The dead people are waking up. Mornings and mirrors. I despise them. Mornings and mirrors only serve to terrify old men.
and will not shut up about bourbon for the entire movie. There's actually a weird missed opportunity right in the middle of this film where our characters are wandering around a militia warehouse, and we see several prominent shots of Glenfiddich 12-year Scotch, and there's no like hallelujah moment between the professor and these boxes. I guess he could just be super choosy. I know that Scotch is Scottish whiskey and bourbon is American whiskey, but these are desperate times, Professor. Okay, so that's our band of heroes, most of whom just completely make this movie for me. And now we are totally off onto our zombie road trip. I can't focus on every setting and sequence, but I did want to highlight one environment, and that is the Amish farm. If I were to tier rank locations on this zombie road trip, the Amish farm takes the top slot. The Winnebago breaks down on screen, which was a common issue off screen, and our heroes push it to a farmhouse. And that's where we meet Samuel, a deaf Amish farmer who communicates with a chalkboard dangling from a string around his neck. We get some much needed camp as Samuel breaks away from introductions, only to reappear and hurl a stick of dynamite at oncoming zombies like it's an Olympic qualifier. Tracy gets some character depth. We see her repair a Winnebago under duress while rocking the same corset from her damsel role at the start of the movie. We see a news report of a zombie clown at a birthday party, and we sense the first threat of zombies in numbers. Love this sliver shot through the planks in the barn. This farm sequence does so much heavy lifting that I was shocked to learn that it was filmed after principal shooting. Unfortunately, what doesn't carry as much weight in this movie are the special effects. Look, I like Diary of the Dead. I genuinely admire this entire production. But the blend and the switching off of digital and practical effects, it didn't work in 2007, and it definitely does not work now. So things I'm talking about are the acid melt in the militia warehouse, or the cell phone shot of the Winnebago bowling over zombies. Any time when there's a big blade that splits a face in two just totally takes me out of it. And then, of course, you have the very last shot of the movie, which has this zombie suspended from a tree, and then it's kind of dangling in half after a shotgun blast. So those are the decisions that make me wonder what the final product of Diary of the Dead would have been like if Romero would have gone with his original production plan, which was to shoot the movie for $250,000 instead of $2 million, go ultra indie, and just release it straight to DVD. Would he have opted for more practical effects? Because the practical effects in Diary of the Dead work quite well. Like the charred zombie cop emerging from a burning cruiser. You get this brain pole spot with an animatronic. Then you have this kid slung back from an arrow pole, and these classic Dawn of the Dead security shots of the encroaching infected. The one time where the blend of special effects hits all the right chords is the hospital, which is one of the only scenes that I remember from my first watch nearly 20 years ago. I love this first zombie, played by special effects makeup lead Greg Nicotero, who was also the lead on Day of the Dead. And I love how Deb inexplicably zigzags around Zombie 2, only to grab defibrillator paddles and zap out her peepers in a flash of goop. The other scene that I remember from my first watch 20 years ago was when the drunk professor character finds a first print edition of Tale of Two Cities and paws at it in like a longing, sensual way. It's just another reason why I love this character. Horny for books, even when the world ends. Oh, and he requisitions a bow and arrow in the middle of the movie and turns into Katniss frickin' Everdeen. But beyond any sequence or character or campy moment, what I will remember most about Diary of the Dead are my visceral reactions to watching the movie twice in 2008 and how polar opposite they are. Okay, so I first watched this movie in the summer after graduating from college, and I was the most relaxed I'd ever been. And I just woke up from an afternoon nap, and I popped in Diary of the Dead, which I was super excited to watch. And it turned out to be one of the greatest movie watching experiences that I'd ever had. And I genuinely believe that I had just watched one of the best movies I'll ever see in my life. Not zombie movies, cinema. So I absolutely gushed about this movie to my best friend. And this is one of those best friends where we watch all of the good stuff, we watch all of the bad stuff, we watch all of the new stuff. You know, when I pitched this movie to him, I didn't pitch it as, hey, this is like a pretty cool zombie flick. It's also found footage. Like, I pitched it to him as like, oh, this is like one of the greatest movies I've ever seen. So when you elevate expectations like that, and then you watch George A. Romero's Diary of the Dead, there's going to be a letdown. And it was weird because it wasn't just that he thought that the movie was not good. I thought this movie sucked. Like, I remember sitting there in a little bit of a shock. It was kind of embarrassing. I almost felt like I needed to apologize to him, but also it felt really disorienting because I was like, no, I just watched this movie. It was so good. Like how could so much change in such a short period of time? This set of events was so disorienting that I actually instituted a rule around it. And that is that if I loved a movie upon first watch, I was never going to watch it again, or I would try my damnedest to never watch it again. And that's a rule that I've mostly stuck by to this day. All that being said, I did watch Diary of the Dead again 4 times in the last 3 months. And I think it's just because I know myself better now. I completely own my tastes and what it is that I'm drawn towards. And I like zombie movies. And I like found footage movies. So a movie like Diary of the Dead was just handcrafted for people like me. I am its target audience. It is my fate to like this movie, even if its fundamentals are just entirely out of whack. And while there's a lot of people out there who've written reviews about how bad this movie is, I know that I'm not the only one who likes this movie. Because when I got the idea for the museum and for the channel, and I started to just gobble up all of these different pieces of zombie media throughout history on eBay, I was just like shocked to learn that there are 3 different exclusive releases for Diary of the Dead. Things like that don't happen unless there's kind of like a genuine interest or intrigue. This movie, which was shot for $2 million and made $5 million in the box office, was sought after for exclusive releases by Best Buy, Blockbuster, and much later on, Walmart. So that being said, let's take a closer look at some of this physical media and see what it can tell us about why. All right, so I have 3 different versions of Diary of the Dead. These both were released in 2007, and this one was released in the 2020s. I want to start off in the middle with this special edition here. This one is from Best Buy, and I'm a really big fan of this banner down here that has the artwork of both Diary of the Dead and the book that's included, Zen of Zombie. And that's just a really fascinating combination because these properties have nothing to do with each other. They're just both about zombies, and they both came out in the year 2007. I'll talk about Zen of Zombie more in a little bit here. But for now, this is your traditional DVD release of Diary of the Dead. Got these nice security tabs here, in and out. This came out through their Dimension Extreme banner. That was only around for about 5 or 6 years. It was committed mostly to indie horror and international movies, but they produced a masterpiece. See? I ain't lying. I really love this box. It's just really shiny. You could probably see the shine all throughout the view here. Feel free to ooh and ah as it rotates and turns. Let's talk a moment about this book here. So if you walked around bookstores or anything in the late 2000s, you were going to see this book, and you were also probably going to see something like this, the Zombie Survival Guide. There's another cover of it, which is a lot more popular. This author eventually went on to write a book called World War Z, and World War Z became the Brad Pitt produced movie, starring and produced movie that I think has made quite a few waves. And then the concept was also adapted into a video game. So you have a thing like a novelty zombie book or a satirical zombie book like that made quite a bit of waves and was adapted in multiple genres. And then you have a book like The Zen of Zombie, which didn't quite have the same reach, but it did have a lot of sequels or follow-ups. So after The Zen of Zombie, Scott Kennemore released ZEO, Zombie Warfare, The Code of the Zombie Pirate, and Zombies vs. Nazis. And the Zombies vs. Nazis thing, that really exploded again around that time due to things like the movie Dead Snow. It's pretty interesting to have something like Zen of Zombie just as a time capsule in this special edition. You know, I was a big collector for quite a while, all the way up until about 2013. I did the whole minimalism thing. But until then, I was in Best Buy all the time. And I don't ever remember seeing special editions where it was a book and a movie when they didn't have anything to do with each other. Let's take a look at this Blu-ray from Blockbuster. The first thing that sticks out to me about this is just how many banners it has. And it's just, there's so many things that are like competing for your attention. So I'm going to guess that this Blu-ray header is as significant as it is, just to distinguish it from HD DVD and DVD, which were both available formats at the time, and they were all competing with each other. So might as well just have that nice and loud and clear. You have that Blockbuster exclusive, probably distinguish it from Hollywood Video, which was like another big national chain, and then you have things like Family Video and so on and so forth. Dimension Extreme, I like this banner here. We already talked about that. And then you have George A. Romero's Diary of the Dead. The amount of information that you have to like absorb and process right here is a little bit overwhelming. It kind of makes me want to not look at it, but it also draws me in. And then you have that classic Blockbuster sticker there. Pretty much the same disc as the DVD. And then you could see this blue banner just extends all the way around, which I think is a little bit ridiculous because they just squeeze the artwork down. But sure, to each their own. And then let's take a look at this Walmart exclusive. Now, this Walmart exclusive steelbook, this came out in the 2020s. I was reading an article about some of the other movies that were released along with it, and it was just like, who asked for this? This is actually the first steelbook that I ever bought. Steelbooks didn't start coming out until I think after I quit collecting. I'm a little surprised that Walmart didn't emblazon this on here in some way, because after you unwrap it, you kind of just lose the whole Walmart exclusivity. I do really like this steelbook though. And then that kind of extends this way, right? They totally change up the font though. Like, this is not the font whatsoever in any way, but, you know, they have that full camcorder sort of border for you there. And then on the inside, you have another version of the theatrical release poster, and then you have Elliot in the hospital. So you can see on these two copies here, I love this. There's these, like, large faults splitting apart right in the middle. This has nothing to do with Diary of the Dead. What false advertising to have there above a piece of very correct advertising. So those are the 3 exclusives of Diary of the Dead. Before I did my research, I really thought that these all were coming out around the same time. So I made a dumb little skit about how the creators of this movie did not know the meaning of the word exclusive. So they just signed exclusive contracts with everybody they met with. I don't know if that's ever going to see the light of day, but yeah. I almost forgot the best part. I want to make this a Blockbuster exclusive deal. What an interesting sounding word. Let's do it. Let's toss the fluff, okay? I want you exclusive. And we'll even throw in a state-of-the-art steelbook. I understand completely. I'm in. What, are you gonna work with the rental guys? Or those guys who sell bicycles and groceries? No. Let's go exclusive right now, and we'll partner you with the hottest zombie book in the country. And yes, that's a thing in the year 2007, which is this year, the year we're in. Hey, I love exclusive deals. It's the only kind I sign, apparently. Before we move on, I just want to flap my gums about a few more entirely inconsequential observations. Just useless guff here. You are welcome to call it trivia, but I'm going to call it saucy thoughts. In the news report at the start of the movie, we see a swift kick delivered from this first responder to a freshly turned zombie, and it always gets a reaction out of me. Most of the radio reports that we hear throughout the movie are recorded telephone conversations between George A. Romero and some of his famous friends, like Simon Pegg or Stephen King. It's actually really endearing to hear a lot of those conversations. They're part of the special features on the Blu-ray and DVD. There is a real missed opportunity for a love triangle between Jason, Deb, and Tony. There's a lot of interactions between Deb and Tony that make you think, what's going on over there? Like when they go to drop Deb off at her house, Deb kind of just leaves and she looks Jason right in the camera and she's like, hey, I guess I'll see you again at some point. And then he's like, oh, I guess I'll try to call you. And then Tony's like, well, what the hell is this shit? Hey, like, I'll stick around. You know, I'll help make sure that everything is okay. And Deb just looked so flattered at that invitation. There's another scene where Deb is sleeping on Tony's chest and Jason has the camera pointed right at them. Throughout the whole movie, Tony and Jason are arguing because Tony is assigned to do makeup and Jason is assigned as the director. And Tony's like, I'm a directing major just like you. Like I don't know why the fuck I'm helping you out. So you have this really ongoing conflict between those two. So I'm just truly shocked that they never really dug into this love triangle and why it wasn't like a significant part of the story, because I definitely think that it could have made everything better. In the script and in interviews, Romero makes fun of sprinting zombies, popularized by things like 28 Days Later and the remake of Dawn of the Dead.
See? I told you dead things move slow.
But those sprinting zombies renewed a sense of terror in the zombie genre, and I'm pretty sure the success of these movies helped give studios the confidence to fund something like George A. Romero's Land of the Dead in 2005. Okay, I do find this just so odd that they feature this mummy zombie so much in their marketing and their PR, because this character is someone that we meet in the first 5 minutes who is human, and then he doesn't turn into a zombie until the third act. And yet, just everywhere you look, he's there. There are other zombies in this movie. I don't understand why he's like one of the faces of Diary of the Dead. Oh, wait. There's that frickin' mummy again. It's just crazy how much they spoil this movie. I mean, it's not like a huge spoiler. When you watch zombie movies, you just expect people to turn into zombies. Like, 'tis the nature of the game. Now, The Mummy does give us one of our best dramatic performances, though, because in Act 3, right before he turns into a zombie, you can really see his psyche just tearing apart at the seams. And I also just love some of these reaction shots from like Tracy seeing that her best friend has just completely lost it, and this little side glance from Deb. So Deb is from Scranton, and she mentions Scranton several times throughout this movie. And I just keep expecting for someone else to be like, oh, like from The Office. But nobody does it because this movie was filmed in 2006, and The Office just wrapped up, I don't know, its second season or something like that. In this scene where Jason and Deb reunite at the start of the movie, we see that Jason is wearing a chain wallet. There is nothing that we learn about Jason before or after this scene that would ever suggest that Jason would wear a chain wallet. I don't know why, but this observation has not left my consciousness since I rewatched this movie. All right, probably my second favorite character is Tracy, and that is because of a scene that happens very later on in the movie where she hits a zombie over the head with a branch, and then she looks at the screen and she says, "Don't mess with Texas," and then inexplicably, the Yellow Rose of Texas plays on screen in one of the most jarring, campy moments that I think I've ever seen in a Romero movie.
Don't mess with Texas.
While Diary of the Dead is pitched as a full-on reboot to Romero's zombie saga, there are some suggestions that it's actually taking place on the same night as the original Night of the Living Dead. Behind the scenes, producers organized a short film contest through MySpace. The top 5 films can actually be seen on the movie special features, and my favorite is called Run for Your Lives. You can still see it on YouTube. It is super campy, and I'm just in awe that the makers of this could organize basically their entire neighborhood to get all bloodied up and participate in all of these really gory takes. It also reminds me of when I was a runner and I participated in a zombie-themed 5K called Run for Your Lives. I still have that frickin' medal right here, and look at that. 2012. During this early reunion between Jason and Deb, we take a look around Deb's dorm room and see that she has this huge globe sitting on her desk. I used to work in college housing, so I've been in thousands of rooms across several states, and I don't think I've ever seen anybody keep a globe in their residence hall room. They're too bulky, they take up too much prime real estate, so I'm just gonna venture a guess that that's where Deb keeps her alcohol. There are several times in this movie where characters will refer to the internet as the net, which is a term that was outdated about 10 years before. I don't know if I've heard anybody use the word the net since maybe like right after that Sandra Bullock movie came out. I really do want to give a lot of credit to George Romero just for his adaptability in making this movie. I mean, at the age of 66, he really could have just stuck with same old, and probably done just fine. But instead of doing that, 2 years after making Land of the Dead, he tried out an entirely new genre with found footage, and he incorporated MySpace, which had only been around for a few years and also vanished a few years after. So I'm just thinking of like being 39 and seeing how fast trends come and go these days and how slow I am to chase trends because I know how quickly they vanish. And then to think about a 66-year-old filmmaker who is trying out so many brand new things for the first time. That's kind of inspiring. One last thing before we move on is that I also bought a movie called Diary of the Dead. That's this. This is from 1976. I was instantly seduced by its packaging. Just look at how clean this case is. Open that up. I mean, all this stuff is pretty gorgeous, right? But this movie has nothing to do with zombies. I think it's supposed to be like a supernatural sort of thriller sort of thing. Yeah, like look at this logo. That's a badass logo, man. I mean, can you really blame me? Okay, we're gonna move away from that. Let's go ahead and set this up and move on. All right, James and I have arrived and we are now ready to enter our third ever artifact into the Museum of Zombie Media. All right, let's take a closer look at this artifact here, just see how everything is laid out and arranged. I was able to place everything in a way where you can kind of see every corner and every nook and cranny that there is. All right, James, would you care for a photo to commemorate the occasion? Perfect. And how about a little bit of fanfare, James? Thank you. Thank you, good sir. Let me straighten that out for you. On March 14th, 2026, I hereby induct George A. Romero's Diary of the Dead into the Museum of Zombie Media. Oh, that's so cool. Oh, that looks so much cooler than I even thought it was going to. All right, James, pardon me. Perfect.